We're going to call this meeting to order. It is 2:31 p.m. on Thursday, March 8th, 2012. This is our March meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee. It's a beautiful day outside. Glad we have some windows around. First and foremost, I need to remember to do roll call before I do anything else. So, Mr. Martin?
Here.
Ms. Epstein? Here. Mr. Carl?
Here.
Mr. Rebuffo not here. Mr. Weaver's not here. Mr. Morris?
Here.
Ms. Witt? Here. Ms. Formello is here. Mr. Wilbur?
Here.
Ms. Howard? Present. And Ms. Smith?
Here.
We do have quorum. So, first, we have the public enrollment announcement. Are you ready?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. This is a public meeting, and for your information, the public is invited to participate, but there is a process. Staff or consultant will give the presentation, and then the committee will discuss it, and then we will open up comments to the floor for the public.
Thank you. Alright. So our first order of business is approval of the agenda.
Move to adopt as presented.
Okay.
Do you have any opposed? Any changes? Hearing none, we are so moved. It is approved. And we also have, the next item is we have approval of minutes. We have the October 13, 2011 minutes. I saw there were some minor changes to names that had to be shifted. Are there any other, does anyone have any? I guess.
Move to approve October 13, 2011.
Second.
Is that Mr. Carter, second? Mr. Wilbur? Do we have any other changes other than any minor revisions from anybody? Any opposed to the motion of approving them? Those minor changes? Abstain since no one had your. We are so then hearing no opposition for meetings, meeting minutes for October 13, 2011. Moving along. We're on our business items, so 5A, the 2035 NTP, and I know we don't really have anything to act on, but Johnston is going to have it now.
Sure, yeah, I'd like to update you on the business developments of the schedule primarily. And then next agenda item involves the air quality conformity and the report, which Steve's going to talk to you about, so won't go into that. And that is a business item. The agenda, the schedule has changed from what we discussed previously. Originally, we were trying to get the assembly to hold a public hearing on March 13th, but during the introduction of the ordinance for the plan adoption, the assembly, I believe what I've been told, the administration requested that the public hearing be set for April 10th. So we, Bart, thankfully, looked into what the implications are for the schedule, and he produced this sheet here that I distributed with the red headings or whatever. What do you call that? Ochre or what? I don't know how to color it. It's really, really pretty. There's two scenarios here. One on the left is assumes that the public hearing will be opened on April 10th and the action will be taken on April 10th. The schedule on the right side assumes that the public hearing will be held on the 10th, but the action will be carried over to the next meeting, which fortunately in April there's 3 assembly meetings, so it could be heard then or acted on the April 17th. You'll see as you go down here, it does disrupt the AMATS committee meetings a bit, and it's going to require that a second meeting be held for both the TAC and the policy committee in order to get the plan adoption adopted in a timely manner. But assuming that that can happen, we have, I think, sufficient time for FHWA and FDA to review the adopted plan and give us their approval by the June 14th deadline. The first scenario works out like this, is spelled out here. The FDA and FHWA will have 25 business days, or basically more than a month, a little bit more than a to approve of the document. And the second scenario where it's approved April 17th, the FHWA and FDA will have 19 business days. And I don't know, Bart, I didn't ask you, didn't chance to ask you, if, I think, Chris, you talked to FHWA and FDA, and they come up with, what did they say about that?
I spoke to Chris Riesenberg, who's on the phone now, and he seemed to think that it wouldn't be too big of a problem. They didn't talk to FTA yet, Ned Conroy. He was going to call him, but I don't think he's returned his call yet, so we haven't heard anything back from FTA. FHWA has been in the loop this whole time. They're more up to speed, so I did offer FTA if they wanted some sort of work session with the budget team, we could do that in advance. But I don't think he's heard back from him yet.
Actually, Bart, I did happen to get a hold of Ned after we talked last. Ned is planning on, as I am, to try to stay engaged where we can up to the point so as not to come to the end and have issues, to try to do our best to, if we had any questions or concerns, that they're out there ahead of time. And so, and you know, there's in the end, the only real approval we have on the MTP is the conformity determination, and that we're engaged in the interagency consultation process, and hopefully there shouldn't be any surprises. We will do our best to get it done within the time frame that you guys have laid out there, and we'll try to get all of our issues on ahead of time as we can, and hopefully we can meet that timeline. I don't foresee it being a problem, but you never know, I guess.
The only potential issue with this timeline here is if any substantial changes were made at the assembly or the policy committee that would require an additional 30-day public comment period. But obviously,
And a redo of the air quality conformity.
and a redo of air quality conformity, so it set things back a month at least, probably more.
Yeah, I've asked staff to take a look at what it would mean to go into labs, which projects in our program would be impacted, and so we're verifying that as well. But it is, was there specific reasons that the administration couldn't accommodate the hearing earlier, or?
I'm not quite sure exactly what took place there, but the administration did decide that that's the date they wanted.
So it looks like we can make it, and barring any unforeseen problems, we can still meet the deadlines.
I guess I have a question, just what are the implications of relapse? Is it jeopardizes some funding and how the process can go, but I mean.
Right, it just depends on if we had any new projects to start up, or any advancing, any phases on any projects that require
Air quality.
air quality conformity.
So we could advance the bicycle pedestrian projects, the road resurfacing projects, but any major construction project, you couldn't advance any phase that would lead to a construction project that hasn't already been obligated.
Okay, and not until the new MTP is
The
adopted.
UMTP. And our tip is mainly 3 major projects this year. It's Eagle River Road, Diamond resurfacing, and
Glen
last
Highway
one.
Pathway.
What?
The Glen Highway Pathway.
Yeah, Glen Highway Pathway. So Eagle River Road isn't set to obligate to the end of the fiscal year, so it shouldn't mess that one up. And the other ones we could obligate because they don't require air quality conformity. But we are still looking into the other smaller projects. But we would have to create an interim tip, AMATS would, and just identify those projects that could be carried forward.
Would just be additional work.
Which, additional work, additional time frame, yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Ms. Dempsey?
I just want to state 2 things for the record. One is that by moving the assembly hearing to April 10th, it does put it after the mayoral election. And the other point I wanted to make, and I don't know if the committee needs to discuss this, but the mayor has said publicly in recent weeks that he's interested in a no-toll bridge, non-public-private partnership, and that certainly would be a major amendment and would require the extra time. I don't know if anyone from the community can comment on that further. I just heard public statements.
I haven't heard anything like that. I was just curious where you might have heard that. Forum?
Yeah, I was not at the Dan Fagan luncheon, but I understand it was mentioned there, and then yesterday at Commonwealth North, it was brought up as a question for Commissioner Lucan.
Are there any other questions or comments? Are there any questions or, yes, John?
Just wanted to follow up on one other item that I'm sure you're all aware that there's an assembly work session tomorrow on the MTP at downtown at City Hall Assembly Conference Rooms from 12 to 2. So I'm here to make a presentation, answer questions there, and you're all invited, of course, to come and watch the fun. There's a number of questions that Assemblyperson Osiander has raised already. We've responded to that and sent it back to her. I haven't heard from any of the other Assembly people, but I'm sure they'll have questions too. The only major question in her and Assemblyperson Osiander's list that might affect the plan, in my opinion, is the Highland Road project. She identified that as, she was concerned that it was in the illustrative part of the plan and thought maybe it should have been considered as two separate projects. One, a short-range project, which would rehab or reconstruct Highland Road from mile 1 to mile 2.2, and then a longer-term project which would reconstruct the rest of the road. Her feeling was that if you had broken it out that way, maybe you could have fit that short-term project or that 1.2 mile project into the plan, physically, financially constrained part of the plan, and the other could have been put into illustrative. So I think we'll have to deal with that and analyze our budget to see if we could accommodate that request if that comes out, something they want to do. But that's the only major concern that I saw that we have to address.
Are there any other questions or comments from the community? Any questions or comments from the public? All right. We're going to move on to business item 5B, the draft 2035 carbon monoxide and air quality conformity.
I can give a quick overview. Conformity is something that we are required to do under federal regulation. Essentially, any area like Anchorage, or I should say AMATS area that has either non-attainment or maintenance areas is required to go through the process. And essentially, it's a process that's set up to ensure that the area, that the transportation plan or improvement programs that is planned won't negatively affect an area's ability to either continue to maintain standards or to attain standards. Anchorage hasn't violated federal air quality standards for CO or PM10 now for over 10 years. So we're technically a maintenance area for carbon monoxide and a non-attainment area for PM10, although that we have a plan, I should say the state has a plan into EPA. It's been there for several years, awaiting approval, and it seems pretty certain that once they get to it, it will get approved. Good. So, so essentially what we're asking here is the TSD to release this for 30-day public review. That's another requirement of federal regulations. And we have gone through some preliminary consultation with the various agencies. They've reviewed the report that we have in front of you, and we've made a couple of minor changes in response to some comments by Federal Highways Administration. They're mostly editorial. There were some omissions. We've clarified some of one very small section in Appendix 2. But we're asking the committee's latitude to make those changes and then release the report out for a 30-day public comment. I'll give you a quick overview of what's included in the report. There's two parts to it. There's a part that deals with carbon monoxide conformity and a part that deals with PM10 conformity. We spent a lot of time on the carbon monoxide analysis. I'm not going to make you suffer through the details of what we've gone through to get that to work. But essentially, what that process entails is using the AMATS transportation model to predict or project travel activity levels through the course of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That's 2012 through 2035. And I think John and Teresa, along with help from CH2M, have used that transportation model to predict what the number of key travel outputs from that model, or the key outputs for that model are the amount of vehicle miles traveled in each of those analysis years, again, 2015, 2025, and 2035, the number of trip starts that occur in each of those years, and then characteristics of the travel during that period of time, what speed the travel was, that sort of thing. Those travel model outputs are used along with the EPA MOVES model. The MOVES model basically uses those travel model outputs to estimate how much CO would be produced in each of those analysis years. We went through that process. There's a budget that we have to meet, and essentially the budget is set out at levels to help ensure that as long as we don't go over the budget, we have a fair amount of confidence that we won't violate standards. The budget's set at 156.5 tons per day, and this would be like kind of a typical or a severe day during the winter period. We think that we could emit as many as 156 tons per day in the CO maintenance area and still maintain the standard. When we go through this modeling process, 2035 has the highest level of emissions, and I think that's we're projecting that emissions there are 146 tons per day, so we're under budget by about 10 tons. And so we've gone through sort of a conventional modeling process. I think that agencies that have reviewed it are pretty comfortable with the way that it has been done. I should point out that we did, and I'm not going to belabor the details, but we have some concerns about the MOVES model itself. We think that the MOVES model is over-predicting starting emissions in future years. And at one point in time, when we had some preliminary model projections from John's group, we thought we were not going to be able to make the budget, but the later model outputs, with later model outputs, we were able to project that we were going to meet the emissions budget. So those concerns are expressed in the report. We want to make sure that EPA knows that we, in the future, we may have to do this again. And I don't know what the travel model is going to predict in terms of travel levels, but we could find ourselves in the same predicament. So we want to make sure that at least we're on the record saying that we have some concerns about the MOVES model. The second part of the report deals with PM10, and that's, for those of you that may not know, it's particulate matter less than 10 microns in diameter, and that's a kind of a legacy to really the ancient past. There's a small area in Eagle River that had, back in the late 80s, had mostly unpaved roads, and as a consequence of those unpaved roads, we were violating the PM10 standard. It was, it seems odd, but it was a very simple fix. Basically, it was either paving or surfacing the roads with recycled asphalt. As soon as that was done, we haven't had a violation since 1989. So it's been years and years since we've had a violation. And the EPA has a process they call the limited maintenance plan process, which we've developed this PM10 plan, which is still under review. But anyway, essentially what the limited maintenance plan process allows you to do is go through sort of an abbreviated conformity process. You don't have to have an emissions budget. All you essentially have to do is re-examine the monitoring data from the area and show that there's a buffer or a margin of safety that you're below the standard at. And we've done that for Eagle River. We're still well below the standards there. I think EPA is comfortable that there's really very little possibility that we're going to violate the PM10 standards there, unless a volcano goes off or something like that. But at least not related to the transportation plan. And although they have not approved the limited maintenance plan, there's another provision in the EPA regulations that allows them to find the limited maintenance plan adequate for conforming purposes. So we didn't have to go through this emission budget process for PM10. And I think all the agencies that have been involved in the consultation process are comfortable that we can move forward. I think EPA said that they plan to publish the Federal Register notice approving this limited maintenance plan process for us in April sometime. So it's still, we're kind of moving forward parallel, but we expect that will be in place by the time we have to make a conformity determination, and AMATS has to make a conformity determination. So with that, and again, we have the AMATS Air Quality Committee assembled. We have a full 9 members. We're planning to convene them before the 30-day comment period ends. So that will be the next few weeks. But with that, I ask you to release the conformity determination report for public review.
Given the fact that the cause was unpaved roads, and given the fact that we've now paved them, and given the fact that it's now been 22 years since we've had a violation, what is the process for just wiping it off the books?
Well, I think it's 20 years after you're determined a maintenance area, you're done. So they have not yet determined that we're a maintenance area. So,
We never turned a plan in.
the plan is in, the plan's been in for several years. They've got a lot on their plate, so it hasn't been approved yet. But again, the limited maintenance planning process for PM10 is fairly innocuous. I mean, it's not nearly the staff time, I won't say waster, but it doesn't take that kind of effort to do that. And so that's not a big deal. And I should say that we are beginning to explore the idea of a limited maintenance plan for carbon monoxide as well, which will also allow us to dispense with this whole conformity budget issue. I think a lot of the work that went into this came on the AMATS planning side, the people that had run the transportation model. So it's just not me and my staff. It's John and Teresa and those folks who had to spend a lot of time doing this modeling for carbon monoxide analysis.
Thank you.
Ms. Epstein?
I think most of you know that I'm the representative of the Air Quality Advisory Committee to the Technical Advisory Committee, and today is the first time I'm seeing this, and so our committee has not gone over this, and I'm a little, I think that's a little bit unfortunate because I can't convey any feedback to the technical committee. So while for process reasons, I'm going to vote against releasing this today. It's in no way a statement about what is in this report, but I think the committee should have been convened before they went to the technical committee.
Can I make a comment? This report was done, 3 days ago? I mean, we've had numerous problems with the model. I mean, it's just been very difficult. I don't think we could have convened the committee because and we've had this issue with moves and so, I mean, I understand your concerns, and I think we will convene the committee, and I think the committee's comments can certainly be conveyed to the TAC.
Can we convene the committee and then make a decision at the TAC at the next meeting about releasing it to the public? So it'll be April.
I don't think so. I think this is the way that it's been done the last several times. During the 30-day public comment period. That's sort of the purpose, at least in my mind. The purpose of the committee is to facilitate public comment. That's one of the 2 or 3 main purposes of the committee. And I think that this is an appropriate use of the committee to do it during the 30-day public comment period.
I don't remember any of us going through a committee prior to going out to public comment. All of our documents go out to public comment and then are reviewed by the committees that advise the TAC. So you're asking for the Air Quality Advisory Committee to review a document that hasn't even been released to the public yet before it gets released to the public?
But it's gone through consultation with different agencies.
But
and
that's an interagency consultation that's by federal rule. And the thing is that we do that, and we can do a private before it even goes to a public draft. You have an interagency consultation draft before it even goes to a public draft. And those don't get seen by committees.
I can't recall one way or the other. I do remember reporting to the technical committee about the air quality advisory comments, and this would have been an appropriate opportunity to do that.
So I just have one comment. Steve, do you think we can change the title to say carbon monoxide and PM10 air quality communication?
We can. That's fine. I mean, that's fine.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't know if there's both of them or anything. That's all. Change it to what? So just that it says carbon monoxide and PM10 air quality conformity determination for the 2035 AMATS metropolitan transit. So that it's put on the release of the public with the title that shows that it's both carbon monoxide and PM10 conformity determination.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Are there any questions or comments from the public? No? Let's back to this. Do I hear a motion?
But can I just ask, are we gonna change the title before it's released? Is that do we have is that?
I moved that
Oh,
we change the title for the documentary.
I'll second.
And release it.
I know.
And, okay, we'll do that first, and we'll do this first, I guess.
All right, so you moved that the title is changed to carbon monoxide and PM10, air quality compliance determination 2035 metropolitan transportation plan, seconded by Mr. Morris. Do I hear any opposed to the changing title? Hearing none, title will so be changed.
Now I move to release the document for public review and incorporate the minor changes that have, from comments from the Federal Highway Administration and the Environmental Protection Agency.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Howe, seconded by Mr. Wilbur. Did everybody hear her motion? You were heard? Okay. Do we have any opposed? Ms. Epstein, we'll go to the vote then. Ms. Farn?
Four.
Ms. Epstein?
Four.
Four. Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Rieger, sorry. Yes, four. Mr. Morris? Yes. Ms. Witt? Ms. Moore-Miller? Four. Mr. Wilbur?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
4.
Yes, 4.
Four. All right. I don't know how many
Whatever
we
it
got
is.
here. So that's 9-1 for the release. So it will be released for the 30-day public review. And there will be a meeting of the air quality performance committee before we meet again.
Yes.
Thanks very much. We're now moving on to item 5C, that bike and pedestrian advisory committee bylaws, and Bart.
Erica couldn't be here today, so she asked me to present this item, and since it's already been before you last month, we had a work session on the 27th to go over some changes, so that's what's presented for you. Items in the red as what's been changed, most notably, it's been the makeup of the committee membership. At the work session, the president decided that DOT and the municipality would serve more as staff, but they didn't need a representative on the committee. And there's a new section added, 2.6, that talks about all the staff that would be available to help this committee. So the membership makeup, we deleted those top two, changed the Native Health Organization to Social Service Organization, removed the Alaska Police Department or State Troopers, and then changed the Community Business Organization to Business Organization, and added 3 additional public members. And then at the next section, 2.1.3, talked about the makeup of those additional members to get a more comprehensive round for the committee and not tie the committee down to such specific spots that they have to fill, allow them a little bit of flexibility. Then on the membership terms, we changed it to end in February to align with the Freight Advisory Committee and the Air Quality Committee, so that all the appointments come to the Technical Advisory Committee and the Policy Committee at the same time. Added a few words. There was one change that she had that did not come from the work session. Hold on, I have an email. It's really simple. Let me see if I can find it. She changed, on the request of Mr. Hansen, changed Public Works to Project Management and Engineering. Two significant things. We'll try to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions from our, anyone? I just have a comment. I wasn't able to come to the work session, but I thought the changes were very good. I read them afterwards. I like the change of the members and actually allowing it a little bit more flexibility, because my staff and the staff will always be available for consultation. But whether we need to have somebody on there, I think that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think the discussion was there wasn't a need to have a police officer there for every meeting, but when the topic would come up, you can do things, notice you could constantly there. And that way you get more participation instead of just showing up once and then not coming again.
Great. All right. Are there any questions or comments from the public?
This is Sam Brooks, and in section 2.1.3,
I would suggest that you add diversity with regard to ethnicity, profession, and geographic location. So we don't really have anything that shows ethnic diversity for the committee.
So I would read instead, for the public members of the committee, please, policy committee shall seek some diversity with regard to ethnicity, profession, and geographic location within the municipality. Are there any other comments from the public?
I just want to say, I also got some positive feedback from some of the public members that weren't able to attend. They'd like to change it.
Do we have any questions or comments on the change? Good idea.
Madam Chair, I move the draft bylaws for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee to read and amended by staff and to include language on section 2.1.3 with regard to ethnicity, profession, and geographic location recommended for the policy.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Wood, seconded by Ms. Hahn. Do I hear any opposed? Hearing none?
Thank you, Barbara. Tell Erica that good work.
Is there any other business at this time? Then moving right along, we'll move on to our informational reports. We have upcoming construction project status. Garth, are you doing that again?
Me and Gary.
Go ahead, go first, Marty.
This is what I passed out. It's the last sheet under there as a packet. It's a comprehensive list of projects that are currently in design, pre-construction, or heading to construction. It does include some projects outside the AMATS area, along the Seward Highway in Girdwood. The main construction projects happening this year are West Dowling Phase 1 and Seward Highway Dowling to Tudor. So those are the major ones. There's also Victor Road and several HSIP projects. They're all listed in here. If you have a specific question, I'll let you peruse this in alphabetical order.
Do we have any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Carr?
I don't know if Bart can answer this, but maybe somebody can, maybe Jerry. The flashing yellow arrows, this came up yesterday in Fairbanks. Is that some mandate that came down?
He will-
Taken?
I'm going to defer to Stephanie. I'm not
Okay.
sure which flashing arrows you're talking about.
It's not a mandate, I guess, that's come down, but it is a recommendation, and within the MUTCD kind of move for using a flashing yellow, which is a 4 signal head rather than for a left turn, for a permissive left turn, rather than having the 5 dog head. And you put a 4 over the left turn lane itself, the 4 head. You go from a green light, a green arrow, to a yellow arrow, to then if you have your permissive phase, when the permissive phase, rather than having the sign that says yield on green ball, you have a flashing yellow arrow. It lets people know that you can go, but you must yield. And I mean, some studies have shown that they've improved safety at locations where people aren't yielding as they should. Or, I mean, so I guess it's not a mandate, but it is a recommendation that's come down to them.
Are these the first ones?
Yes. Well, no, actually, there's already 2 in place. There's one at Northern Lights Boulevard in Muldoon for Muldoon, the northbound. No, sorry, now we're going east. Eastbound Muldoon turns onto Northern Lights right there by the cars. There's a flashing yellow arrow there. And there's also one at Huffman and Lake Otis for eastbound at Huffman and Lake Otis. So those are 2 that are already in operation. I have had calls and questions about them, but most everybody who calls they get it. It's almost intuitive to know what it is. And these 9 that are proposed are just kind of a continuation. And high-risk locations where it seems like people aren't yielding as they should and being seen if they can kind of help with that, or if before we have to go to a protected only for safety reasons.
Thank you.
Gary?
In addition, what it helps is actually on signal heads that are just permitted, it allows you to get the additional capacity through. Because you get a lot of frustration from drivers that see a red arrow and they see no oncoming traffic. And so this is a way to allow them to go when there is ability for them to.
I don't think we're doing any
Not doing any-
that are protected only, that we're going to the
But that
protected
is one
permissive
other
right now. That is
benefit.
one other benefit. Because most of here, we're not like Oregon. When Oregon first started doing it, most of their left they had is protected only, and then they went to the forehead to allow the permissive movement, and everybody loved it. We typically only protect our lesser if we have to, because it's needed a tight distance, crossing to the west, things like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Dusty?
Bart, this probably is not going to be an issue, but the Glen Highway Trail rehabilitation, when is that expected to start? Because I just learned last night that the little nugget is going to be along that trail, the triathlon, which is the end day.
I don't know when construction is actually supposed to start. Do you know off the top of your head, Kim?
Normally, it's only on a short section, but they can't use Elmendorf for that this year.
It's good to know.
I-
Let the project manager know.
There is one mention, the special provisions to coordinate. There's also the Mayor's Marathon, which heads out on that trail to the overpass.
Yeah, these are bikers too, so it's, makes it even a little more complicated, bikers and runners.
I'll let her know.
May 20th.
Are there any questions or comments? Are there any questions or comments from the public? Thanks, Bert. Gary, are you gonna, maybe you have something? You moved, I'm like, you left.
My name is Gary Jones. I'm the capital program coordinator for Jerry in project management and engineering. I'm here to discuss briefly the municipal projects that we anticipate getting underway for construction this summer. I don't think I need to let you know what they all are. I put them on a handout, so hopefully everyone has a copy of that. Oh, you don't? No. Okay, I can read them off for you, Jerry. In summation, there are about $50 million worth of construction that we expect to have underway this summer. Those are the dollar numbers that we actually expect to spend this year on construction projects. Some of the major ones, the 9th Avenue reconstruction, phase 2 of that, get going this year. 32nd Avenue upgrade by Puddle Theater going east of Muldoon. We hope to finish up the 40th Avenue extension. We have a big road improvement district project, local roads, but between Diamond Boulevard and Campbell Lake, Arlene, Pelican, Kingfisher, some of the streets that will be affected there. That is dependent on the road bond passing next month. Our section of the road bond this year is $27.42 million. So please vote in April. A couple of the other big projects, the Raspberry Road upgrade from Arctic to Sea, very needed section. And then finishing up the Van Buren Street, 48th Avenue traffic and circulation project. So we also have a number of drainage projects, some pedestrian work, service rehab, and then street maintenance is hoping to chip seal about 30 miles this year, which will really help. Do another 10 to 12 miles of recycled asphalt. And of course, the regular activities, street sweeping 3 times, and they also intend to do quite a bit of storm drain cleaning this year. I'd like to mention that we also have $277 million worth of legislative requests. The last couple of years, the capital bill has included about $120 million that would be directed toward us for road, transportation, drainage type projects. The governor's vetoed about half that, so the amount we've actually received has been in the neighborhood of 60 million, and we're optimistic of getting a similar number this year. None of these current projects are dependent on that funding, except for one, and we are doing something, a different approach this year. Last year, we did some reclaiming projects, which we found was excellent value for the dollars involved, where we could save some of the infrastructure before it totally went bad and needed to be reconstructed. And we discovered there's a lot of bang for the buck on those, and so this year we've approached the legislator and asked $3 million for each Senate district. Now that's probably a high number because they're pretty limited in the amount that they can fund, but we've identified priority areas within each Senate district and sent copies to the legislators so they would know, if you give us funding, this is where the money is going to go. So we can begin to address some of the local roads in Anchorage that really are starting to need work. And to let you know, we will be having our annual construction coordination meeting May 3rd. It's tentatively scheduled for this year, hopefully at the BP Center, if Terry has it lined out. And if you want information on any projects, you can always go to our website, imi.org, and go to the project management engineering department. And there's a link to projects there.
Are there any questions? Any questions?
Terry, the one project, Gary, that we need this funding for, did you say?
The local road reclaiming
Oh, I'm
for the
sorry.
Senate district.
Oh, that one, okay, sorry.
I'm sorry, I did have a question, yeah, Gary, on the re-chipping or resealing, whatever you call that, is this new roads that you're gonna be doing that to, or are you going back over some of the old ones?
No, the old roads.
So 120th will finally be fixed again after the trucks have destroyed it?
They do not, as far as I know, they're not planning to do 120th this year. Some of the areas that Dan Southern mentioned to me include east of Muldoon, say the northern section from about 11th up to Peck, all the roads back in there, which really do need work. Corridor between Diamond and Dowling, over the new Seward Highway, and then east of Lake Lewis. Everything through there, either wrap or chip seal. So big chunks of town.
Well, Alaska Trailblazing did a good job of destroying 120th, so. And the other thing is, just a comment, I've lived off of Johns Road for 19 years, and I just sold my house, and now you're just upgrading Johns.
Excuse me, that's a DOT project. We'll
Oh, I'm
turn that
sorry.
over to the
All right. Well, the DOT, have something about DOT.
Now that you've moved,
Yeah.
now that you've
Where are you moved to?
I moved to Southport, so.
We can take care of that.
I was saying, those are your roads, we can do something.
So I'll get Victor Road.
You know, we've got some E8s and Acura. Yeah, would you give me your address?
I do want to talk to you about sidewalk snow removal, though.
I don't do snow removal.
All right,
We scour snow there, or street maintenance. Yeah.
great. Are there any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to, because I answer a lot of questions from people, understand what exactly your reclaiming project would do. And should we talk about reclaiming what physically happens to the road?
The reclaimer is a machine, piece of equipment that can chew up the existing road.
Oh, okay.
And then, instead of having to haul it off, which was one of the most expensive parts of the project, to be able to then lay that back down as leveling course, and then pave right over it, all in one motion.
We did this last year.
Essentially repaving.
Spinard area, some of the strip paving roads there, and other ones, and same thing out in Sand Lake. It, brought brand new service. Yeah. So it was highly successful last year with Victorville.
Thank you, Barry.
I know that Stephanie won't do this, so I'm going to do it for her. Earlier today, I was at an event for the top 40 under 40 for Anchorage, and I know there were over 180 applicants in there, and Miss Morillo was selected as one of the top 40 under 40, and so I think that deserves a round of applause.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I was debating about the piece of, I'm going to call it artwork that they gave to us really is, I could kill somebody with the number one. It's this last one, but it's useful. I was debating bringing it down here and putting it on here. So it had it look pretty, but.
Is there a red carpet out front?
There was red.
There
was
was.
red.
There was
Yes.
red.
And Stephanie got quite the attraction from the commentator being the traffic engineer. It was like,
I know, now everybody knows who I
so
am.
now everybody knows who you are.
Exactly.
Which is very good.
Okay.
Well, I was going to mention that. Thank you, Lance. Couple of things. We finally are able to move some of our agreements with the DOT forward. Our indemnification language. We have two opposing terms that say the same thing. We couldn't write it down the same way. So I think we've finally got language, and so some of these agreements are moving forward, and which is good. We can finally have 3 years. It's only been 3 years for this language process. The other thing is that we had a meeting today, Stephanie and I did this morning, and we've been meeting with the DOT to see about it. We have some of the most discontinuous roads in this town as far as ownership. You know, it really doesn't make sense, and we're trying to look at seeing if we can't make it a little bit more understandable, and also update some maintenance agreements we have with the state, and not cost anybody any money. So hopefully we can come to some agreement. I think we got some good prospects.
Since our meeting this morning, I've learned that the state wants Southport.
It's yours. We won't even take anything for it. It's yours.
I can't.
Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Yes, I do. It must be. I want to move. I'm not going to tell you where. It must be a new sense of cooperation between DOT and various agencies, because we also, after 3 years, just finished some indemnification language with DOT. So all the crossings that we have from Seward to Fairbanks are now permitted again. So that's good. But more importantly, and I think Craig sent out a email, I hope he did, but the train trip in June,
Yes.
the date is set. I don't know what the date is, but it's set. So that's for the Freight TAC Committee, but the AMATS has also been invited for that. So try to mark your calendars. I think it's June 21st.
He sent an email a while ago. I remember seeing it and being kind of like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It was a while ago. I remember seeing it.
It's like June 15th or June 21st, something like that.
We can ask him to resend.
We'll tack the business car on the end of the Seward train. So we'll be able to stand on the back platform, you know, drink whiskey and smoke cigars and, you know, do all those things the old people used to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman, it's the 20th of June.
20th of June, okay. And it's only 2 months until passenger service. The tourists are coming back.
They are. Anything else? All right, then the next scheduled AMATS meeting is the policy committee meeting, which is 2 weeks from today on March 22nd downtown from 1 to 3, and we'll be back here next month on April 12th.
And the new schedule, I think the continuation meetings have already been sent out. It looks like the 20th of April. Should count on that being the continuation of that 12th meeting.
Yeah. Did we have a work session?
Yeah.
Like work session, so we have a continuation.
Yeah, I think they sent out 2 additional dates, and one was earlier than the 20th, but the 20th will be really good.
And I actually am out of town that day. I don't know if, the earlier day was fine.
The
So-
earlier day wouldn't allow us to advertise everything 7 days in advance of the meeting. That's why we have to go with the 20th. unless we choose a new date.
Pretty important meeting. Going to be there.
We can talk about it at the public meeting.
Okay. All right, well, thanks, everybody. We are adjourned.